So here I'm comparing this part here. So this is a swingarm linkage for a 2016 Raptor. There it is, getting a number of different upgrades. But specifically what I'm looking at here is this linkage piece. The original equipment one is made of steel, relatively thin as you can see. This one's in pretty good shape, but one thing I noticed is being relatively thin, it does flex a bit. The aftermarket one made of billet aluminum. It's pretty great looking. I mean, it adds an aesthetic appeal, but also quite a bit more rigid. So I'm giving actually quite a bit more force than I was on the other one, not flexing at all. Also has a nice Zerk fitting there, but I think it'll be a pretty great upgrade. So there it is installed. I applied liberal grease to the bearings and used a little thread sealer on the nut and then torqued that to 40 foot-pounds. And you can see it rotates nicely and looks good. It'll be definitely a nice appearing upgrade. Alright, so the swing arms now are ready to be installed. This swing arm pivot bolt will be torqued to 72 foot-pounds. I already got this torqued on there at 40 foot-pounds. And then that other piece of linkage is on there as well. I did clean everything off and then took these apart, applied liberal grease on the inside. Spend extra time on that though because there are no Zerk fittings here. So your only opportunity to add grease there is now. Alright, so let's get this bad boy on there. Alright, so now I'm ready to install the shock and the linkage. So this in here, which is actually called the connecting arm, I wrote my torques down. There's 31 on that one and 40 on that one. And then the upper shock mount to frame is 40 foot-pounds. This one is 31. Which is this one here, and then the other ones to this, which is called the relay arm, are all 31. Now, I initially mounted this on the relay arm, this arm, on the swing arm before mounting the swing arm. I thought that would be a good way to do it, but I realized if I do that, then I have to take the skid plate off to be able to get to access the bolts. So anyways, I just found it easier to take it off. In addition, you gotta make sure you orient this the correct way. So I put an arrow to make sure that I don't screw that up. So that part goes forward. All right, so let's get everything on. All right, here I am at the point of installing the new axle, which looks pretty great. So I've gotten everything cleaned up, and just to kind of show a comparison so you could see how things actually go together. So there's the original equipment setup with the center section. The axle, which you can see is kind of rusty with that one bearing being on there pretty well. And then here's all the nice new pretty stuff that's about to go on here. So new center section, did get 2 new seals, which go here and here. And I am going to reuse that old clip. They typically say to replace that with a new one, but this one's in good shape. And then you can see the sprocket hub, the disc brake hub, and then that locking nut, which is a little different than the original equipment. The original equipment washer also is conical, so it only goes on one way, or should only go on one way. That one's not, that's flat. In any case, let's see how this all looks as it goes on. It looks pretty great, huh? All right, so here the center section's installed. Now that bearing is sealed, so that you don't really actually need to pack grease in there, but I always figure better more than less in these types of situations. Also put some on the outside, keep that from seizing up in this swing arm. And I think the main thing to be careful of is as you're pushing that center section, be careful you don't pinch those seals. I found just part of the seal getting hung up and I had to just kind of align it with my finger. So just be careful with those seals, make sure they're aligned correctly and not getting pinched. So now moving on to the next step, which is going to be to install the sprocket hub. And to do that, there's 2 of these seals. There's the same one on each side. This one goes here and seals underneath this area here, okay? And then the clip here will go in this groove here and will seal right within that area like that, okay? And I'm going to put those on first and then slide the axle in from that side. So now that the sprocket hub is on, I just want to show how that clip holds in place. So it's into that groove, and you want to be careful not to scratch things up. That's why I didn't use like a screwdriver to kind of push it on. So you want to be careful. You can get it on with your hands. It's a little bit challenging, but just kind of work it all the way around. So then when the nut on the other end of the center section, all the way over here, pushes on this, it will bring the sprocket hub over that gap there, and then that will keep that clip from having any chance of coming out and will hold it in place. And then underneath here, remember there's that one O-ring seal. All right, so now I'm going to install that second O-ring. It goes in a groove basically right there underneath that seal. And then I'll be able to put on the brake disc hub, which will slide over that and then seal with this surface here is this outer seal. So that seal there seals kind of on the inside of this between the axle and that to keep water out, and then that seal there seals on the outer surface here. Almost forgot to mention this piece here. This actually has to go on before the disc brake hub. Now, I have my swing arm plate on, which actually keeps you from installing that. But instead of taking the swing arm plate off, I can just push the center section back just a little bit to clear that. Alright, so now it's time to install the axle nut. And this one didn't come with any instructions, so if yours does, please follow those, but I'm going to show you how I'll do it. Now there's two different sides to this. Make sure the flat side goes in with the washer there. Now, in contrast to the original equipment nut, this one isn't going to be nearly as tight in terms of rotational torque of the nut itself. The original equipment nut, which is here, has that conical washer. That, I think they say 170 foot-pounds for that. Now, this one, we have this tool here to tighten, so you're never going to anywhere near that. So I just plan to get it good and tight with this tool here. And then this one, the advantage is it has these two Allen bolts to help hold it in place, so that helps to lock it. Those are 5mm, and it doesn't come with Torx for those, but in general, I mean, this is 6mm threads on here. Usually tighten those anywhere from about 5 to 10 foot-pounds, and then liberal application of blue thread sealer. And I did clean those threads off pretty well. I'll actually put some on there too. That may not be necessary, but at least thread sealer on these bolts that go in there. All right, so now that axle nut is installed, the washer between it and the brake rotor hub. Now I went a little tighter on these bolts than I typically would for a 6mm bolt, which typically be 5 to 10 foot-pounds, but I went a little higher, 12.5, because these are prone to loosening up. Those are pretty high quality bolts. Used liberal application of blue thread sealer on there and got it nice and tight. Important to keep in mind though, as you tighten one of these to torque, then tighten the other one to torque, but then keep going back and forth, because as one tightens, the other one will loosen a little bit, so you have to kind of go back and forth a bit. All right, but there it is, and also good policy to make sure everything rotates smoothly. All right, but it looks pretty great.